Hi, my name is Russ, and I'm the developer of the Ensembles package. Thanks for coming to the video. This one is about time series analysis, and we're going to look at a couple of things that you can probably relate to. One is we're going to be looking at jobs. And in fact, it's a very, very major part of a lot of data science to forecast jobs. So we're going to see how the Ensembles package can do that, specifically the forecasting function. And as a little bit of a teaser, we're going to beat all the experts for 3 months in a row, which is pretty cool. The second part of this is going to look at something called the writer's room. And typically when the writer's room gets mentioned, there's only one actual writer's room that people are referring to. And it's kind of interesting. I used a lot of that information in developing both the time series function as well as the whole Ensembles package. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that and see if that might be of use to you. So this is going to be a lot of fun, really interesting. Looking forward to it. Leave some comments down below and let's get started. So the Ensembles package has a number of functions. We're going to be looking at forecasting. And if your version of forecasting is the weather, you're in the right ballpark. So we're off to a decent start. But what we're going to be forecasting actually is a time series about jobs. So let's back up. What is a time series? A time series is something that changes over time in regular time intervals. And labor data is a great example of this. So I'm going to be using data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we're going to be looking at the number of non-farm employees in the United States. And no, I have no idea why they didn't count the farmers. That seems odd to me. So if you look at the left, you'll see an example of what this looks like. You can see each month, such as July 2022, and the number, which is 690. The next one is August of 2022, and the number is 243. This is the 1 month to 1 month to 1 month change in the number of all non-farm employees. You can also do total number of employees as well, but this is the statistic, this is the number that a lot of people get very interested in, and you'll see some of that in just a moment. In the middle, you see just a very typical page on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. If you want to get just a basic start, you can pull up any one of many time series and download it as a CSV file and then just use that. You'll see how to do that in just a moment. And if you want anything in terms of this, the website address is there on the right, https://www.bls.gov. So in order to work with the Ensembles package, it's got to be formatted a very specific way. The dates have to be called label, and the specific value month to month has got to be called value. You set it up that way, it's going to run. If it's got like a different name or something like that, then it's not going to run. Nicely enough, and I think this is a huge feature of this, the formatting of the data is actually pretty easy, and that's actually the hardest part. Normally, in all this AI and analytics, it's setting up everything. That's all done for you. All you have to do is put the data in the right format. Do that, you're good. So, who's interested in this? Well, how about every president of the United States for 100 years going back, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, every economist, and on and on and on. So the exposure to time series analysis in the United States and in many other countries is massively huge. Just as a little bit of an indicator, the Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes their monthly report typically on the first Friday of each month, unless that's a holiday like the 4th of July, which is a holiday in the United States. And it's the #1 news item each month when that happens. It's really crazy. What can the Ensembles package do to help? Turns out it can do everything. So let's look at how this works. We're going to use the US economy as our data. So let's start by taking a look at just the overall US economy. What you can see here is a total number of employees by month. And if you look at the top one, that's all employees. And it starts way back, like 15 years ago. And that big drop you see towards the right, that's COVID. And as you can see, all employees had a huge drop, but the one right below it, construction, not as big. Education, bigger than construction, but a lot smaller than all employees. The one below that, government, huge, huge, huge drop. And you can see this all the way down to the last one is unemployment. And as all these people lost their jobs, guess what? Unemployment went up. The one with the smallest drop is professional services, as you can see. So this is the total number of employees. What everyone's actually interested in is the 1 month change. So here's what that particular graph looks like, again, for all that same data. So if you want to play around with this, there is so much time series data at the Bureau of Labor Statistics that it's crazy. You can get it by either all employees or many, many sectors of the economy, such as construction, education, finance, government, hospitality, on and on and on. And then within those, you can get number of hires, separations, layoffs, average wage, hours, unemployment, ... So you'll get the measure every month on a regular basis. That's what makes it a time series. And then the URL again for all this is right there. So let's say you've got your data, some of which is actually included in the Ensembles package. What do? Well, let's look at the forecasting function in the Ensembles package. It's only one line of code, which I think is kind of amazing. So you load the Ensembles package, and then the forecasting function is going to ask you just a couple of things. Where's your data? And you can either use like something else in another package, or what you're seeing here is I've got the data stored like on my GitHub repository at the moment. It can be anywhere. How much do you want to split between train and test? So I want to do a 60-40, so I'll put 0.60. How many months do we want to forecast ahead? Well, 3. Is this monthly, quarterly, or weekly? It's monthly. And do I want to use parallel processing? Yeah, let's do that. So again, the 5 items. Where's the data? So link to your tidy data. How much do you want to put in the train amount? And usually I'll put 0.6. How many intervals do we want to forecast? Usually I'll do 3. And is this quarterly, monthly, or weekly? And then do you want to use parallel processing? So let's set up the time series to forecast for December of 2023. There's a huge advantage to doing that you don't have in other types of AI and analytics, and that we can actually check. We know what the number was for December 2023. We're going to go all the way back to January of 2006, put that data through our process and see what it is. So let's start with the answer, something I'm sure you always wanted to hear when you were in school, right? Let's start with the answer. How many people were actually working, as recorded working, the 1 month change in December of 2023? What was the actual final answer? And as it says right here, the 1 month change in total non-farm payroll for December 2023 was revised down, which they revised up and down a lot, to a final number of 290,000. Okay, so what, I hear you ask? What the forecasting function is going to do is it's going to set up 4 solutions, one on the other, trying to outperform one another. And let's take a look at those. It's going to be measured by root mean squared error, mean percentage error, mean absolute error, and just mean error. Here's the crazy thing. In this particular case, for December, all 4 of them had the same result, which was neural net 4, and it came out at 226.3693, or 226,000 people. So let's see how we did with this compared to the experts. This, I think, is crazy. So the forecast results for December 2023 was 223. The Wall Street Journal was forecasting 185,000, so they were low by 38,000. Reuters was forecasting 170,000, so they were even farther off. Reported by CNN was 200,000, and the Ensembles package, like you just saw, was doing 226,363. Out of the 4, the Ensembles package, the forecasting function, was the closest by a mile. Okay, so we got lucky once. Can we do it again? So let's set all this stuff up, and let's see what we can do for January. There's a good question. So let's take a look at January. The final number for January was 229,000. I searched and searched and searched in the Wall Street Journal, couldn't find what their number was for forecast, but Reuters was easy. That was 180,000, so they were low by 49,000. CNN said 176,500. They were low by 52.5. And the ensembles function, you can see it right there, 191,000. So we were low, but we were closer than any of the other estimates. Let's do this for the third time. What if we tried to do February? Well, at this point, the number is 275,000. The reason I'm saying that is because the numbers do get revised, and I would not be surprised if February's number is revised. But the Wall Street Journal forecast 198,000, so they were low by 77,000. Reuters forecast 200,000, they were low by 75,000. CNN reported a forecast of 200,000. And the ensembles, which you can see right there, our best result is 273,219. We were low by a little over 1,700. So we won 3 months in a row. We beat all the experts. What's crazy is the forecasting function in the ensembles package provides you a whole lot more than just these summary results. It will give you everything you need to make the best possible decision. So it will give you a summary report like this, initially sorted by root mean squared error, but you can click on any of those column headings and it'll sort by that, which is nice. And it's a ton of functions. It's not just one, it's a whole bunch of them. So here's the first part, all the way down to 28th function, and it does a lot more for you. So it gives you 6 results for each of the 28 time series models. You can see predictive versus actual. You can see a histogram of the residuals. You can see the autocorrelation function. And this one in the lower left corner is a work of art. This indicates that what we're modeling is signal, not noise. It's so good. Most of the other ones, and you'll see ones in just a couple seconds, are not nearly this clean. Starting up on the right, that's residuals, and then innovation residuals, and then it gives you a plot of the forecast. So it does all this for all of the models. Here's another one. It does even more than that. It gives you forecasts, graphs of the forecast, for all 28 time series models. And it gives you the autocorrelation function for all 28 of them. And what this is measuring is, do we have something called white noise? So white noise means that you're only working with signal. You're not actually trying to model noise, which would be incorrect. The way you can tell, if you look, for example, at that second row, that first and second example, those lines are way above the dotted blue lines. That means that there's a lot of noise in what we're working with. Whereas if you look at the fourth one down, you can see, yeah, not bad. But you go to the next one over, fourth row, second column, beautiful. There are none of the vertical lines are above the blue dotted lines. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We are mapping noise, signal, not noise. Wonderful job. And it gives you all of them, which is so cool. Also gives you something called innovation residuals. And the best thing in the world is if these are straight. So if they're curvy or bumpy or something like that, that's an indication that that particular model hasn't accounted for all the data. It also gives you predictive versus actual, and some of these look kind of crazy, but the good ones look really good. It also gives you predictive versus residual. It also does a whole bunch of other stuff. Let's say you just wanted to map all of the non-farm employees. It'll give you a total map of the data, but it'll do something else really nice too. It will map the trend, which is super cool. It'll map each seasonal subseason. So if you're like monthly data, what happened every January? It's there. Every February, it's there. Every March, it's there, all the way down to every December. It'll put it all together for you, which is kind of crazy. And then you'll be able to see the value, the trend, the seasonal trend, the remainder, all that kind of stuff. I created a couple of innovations here. This is mapping anomalies. So the blue dotted line is when the value goes above or below 1 standard deviation, the red dotted line above and below 2 standard deviations. So you can see when this thing is scrambling around. And obviously, hopefully, we want it, within normal range. It'll also calculate all the lag plots. It produces all the features, all the quartiles, and then it also gives you the results from the 3 most recent time intervals and then the whole year. And by the way, that 3 most recent, that's a really good estimate. If you would have simply bet the 3 most recent, you would have beat the best economic forecast for December, January, and February. The ensembles package is even better than that. So it gives you all of this really fast, All you have to do is just give it one line of code, hit run, you're good. So let's turn a corner. I want to look at something called the writer's room. This is an actual plaque. I did not create this in Photoshop. And it says here at City Center, which is in New York, your show of shows, and if you look closely, you'll see that that's in bold, came to life each week. Sid Caesar, who's the key person in this, Carl Reiner, Mel Brooks, Neil Simon, Howard Morris, Mel Tolkien, Lucille Callan, the only woman on the team, Tony Webster, Joe Stein, Danny Simon, who's Neil Simon's brother, Max Lehman, and Woody Allen made both a classic TV series and comedy history. The show's scripts were created in the legendary room, which this plaque commemorates, on the 6th floor. And as it says, if these walls could talk, well, I guess we wouldn't need a plaque. How good was this? It was crazy good. Not remember much anymore, but I want to use some of this. And starting with, someone once asked, Carol Burnett, who was your favorite comedian? So rather than reading you Carol Burnett's answer, here is Carol Burnett's answer.
Oh, I loved the Sid Caesar show. I never got the chance really to watch your show of shows that much because I was going to UCLA at the time, and we'd just gotten a television set, and I had homework. I had all kinds of projects that I was doing at school. So when I got to New York, I moved into a place called the Rehearsal Club, which Stage Door was written about. It housed 25 young ladies interested in the theater, and we had a woman who ran the club. It was all very proper. Young men couldn't go anywhere beyond the parlor. And I started on Saturday nights to watch Sid, the Sid Caesar Hour, I guess it was called that. And that was when Nanette Fabray was on. And of course, Howie and Carl, and I think Pat Carroll. And I just couldn't get over how clever everything was and how funny they all were. And then I met a fella that we'd always go to the Stage Delicatessen and get coffee. And his name was Milt Kamen, and he was a wonderful comic. And he stood in for Sid Caesar when they were blocking before they were going to go live on Saturday nights. And we became friends, and he said, would you like to come and see a rehearsal? I said, absolutely. And so he snuck me in, and I sat up in the balcony, and I watched Milt stand in for him, and then Sid would be in the booth looking at the camera shots, and then he'd come out, and then they'd do this rehearsal with all of them. And then I'd run home. That would be at 5 o'clock. And then at 8 o'clock, the show would go on. And I could see where they'd made changes and done different things and how they had tweaked it and made it better. And My Fair Lady opened, and 2 tickets were donated to the rehearsal club, and I won the lottery. And so I won 2 tickets to My Fair Lady on a Saturday night. I never told this to Julie. Anyway, I gave the tickets to my roommate because I said, Fair Lady's going to be running for 100 years. I know I'll get to see it, but Sid Caesar's live, and I'll never see that again, and I want to see what they're doing.
Most of the nation did exactly what Carol Burnett just described. Literally. Restaurants, shows, clubs, theaters appealed to NBC to move the show from Saturday night because people would stay home rather than do business. And by the way, if you listened very carefully to what Carol Burnett said, you would be correct in drawing a very simple conclusion. As far as I know, they never said this, but it would have been perfectly accurate for Sid Caesar in 1950 to say, live from New York, it's Saturday night. Literally, the grandparents of the people on the SNL cast now might not have been born yet. Sid Caesar was doing this, and he was by far the funniest man in America and one of the best known. He's not nearly as well known now, obviously. So I want to just play you a short clip of Sid Caesar, And I'm not going to say anything other than all the evidence indicates that the story he tells is completely, totally historically accurate. There's tons of evidence. And I think you're going to find this just freaking amazing.
I'll never forget, I was on the floor, and I was directing the show. It was a show day. And I was saying, well, all right, we'll get this in. All right, fine. And my secretary would come and said, Mr. Caesar, Albert Einstein wants to talk to you.
And you said,
And I said,
what's Mel Brooks up to now,
said,
right? Yeah.
good joke, fellas. Very good. Everybody laughing. Good. All right. Joke is over. We got a lot of things to do. He said, no. Dr. Einstein wants to talk to you. I said, the joke is over. I mean, what are we talking about? No. And when I realized Einstein wanted to talk to me, and he made a date to meet him at Princeton and come over and talk.
What do you want to talk about?
I didn't know. So, but I ran out and I bought every book on relativity that you could find because I was going to learn the theory of relativity over the weekend. Unfortunately, he passed away. I never got to talk to him. But a couple of years later, I was walking through the halls of Columbia University. I was going to give a little tiny talk there, mostly question and answer. And I bumped into this man, and he said, excuse me, aren't you Sid Caesar? I said, yes. He said, I'm Robert Oppenheimer. I said, who? Robert Oppenheimer. Robert Oppenheimer. He said, no, Albert, we used to talk about you. I said, oh? He had figured out the physical equation. He wanted to talk to you about the human equation. I said, Einstein wanted to talk to me? That was like, and he just walked away. And I said, Einstein, I made Einstein aware that I was alive. And I feel no self-worth. Then after that, I started to talk to myself, Sidney, you're an idiot. You're a dumbbell. You're a dumb-do. You're a bung, bang, bang, bang. Albert Einstein wants to talk to you. He's aware that you're around. My God, think of it. How many people... And that's when I started to drink in a little bit because I was starving myself. I wouldn't allow myself even to enjoy a compliment from somebody who said, a wonderful show. Last night. Oh, yeah, well, it's okay. Could not accept it. Could not accept any compliment.
Because you weren't worthy of it,
I wasn't worthy of it. I didn't do it. Some power did it. Why am I going to take credit for it? But I was doing it. That's what I finally realized, that I was doing it. I was punishing myself. I was the one who made people laugh. And I was the one who was making me crazy and making me sad.
That's the exact point where that interview stops. So I want to just talk about the fact that Einstein wanted to find the answer to the human equation, and the only person on the planet that he wanted to talk to is this guy. So a couple of pieces I think are useful to kind of give a little bit of background. Did Einstein ever smile, have a sense of humor? Yes, he did. Einstein could laugh and all that kind of stuff, and these photos are absolutely, again, historical. But Einstein had a very, very, very long-standing interest in what he described as the human equation. So I just want to show you a couple of photos to illustrate that, and then we're going to do something with that, which I hope you're going to enjoy. So this is a photograph of Einstein. Very, very common situation for him. He's got a piece of chalk in front of a chalkboard. He's actually teaching in this particular situation, as you'll see in just a couple of seconds. This is the original photo. Someone many, many years later, just a couple of years ago now, added color to it, and I really like the color for reasons you'll be able to see in just a couple seconds. So when you color this photo of Einstein, it looks a little more like what we're used to. But the reason this reflects Einstein's interest isn't the fact that it's Einstein standing in front of a chalkboard. This photo you're going to see in just a second is 100% absolutely historical, and I'll give you the proof in just a second. It's not that Einstein's in a classroom, it's who the students are. This is completely, totally, historically accurate. What actually happened, this is not a class at Princeton University where Einstein was faculty. Einstein got invited to give a guest lecture, which is what you see, and commencement remarks at our nation's first HBCU, Historically Black College and University, a place called Lincoln College, now Lincoln University outside Philadelphia. Einstein said absolutely yes. He turned down almost everything else, but he accepted this invitation. Why? Well, a couple of things we know. Lincoln University was the first degree-granting HBCU in the country. Their nickname in the early years was the Black Princeton because they had such strong connection to the Princeton University. Langston Hughes, Thurgood Marshall were graduates. From 1854 to 1954, that whole century, Lincoln University graduates accounted for 20% of African American physicians, over 10% of African American lawyers in the U.S. Graduates would go on to become, and if you know the history of the continent of Africa, this is just mind-blowing, the first president of Nigeria and the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, who is the father of African nationalism. If you ever study the history of Africa, these people are major. Usually the note is that they studied in America. That's true. They both studied at the same school. The other thing that impacted Einstein, who was Jewish, is this line from Wikipedia. In the 1930s, which is a little before he visited, many Jewish intellectuals fleeing Europe after the rise of Hitler and anti-Jewish legislation in pre-war Nazi Germany followed Hitler's elevation to power, and they emigrated to the United States and they found work. Where? Teaching in historically black colleges. That's where Einstein went to speak and get his honorary degree. So he actually did. This is a photo of him getting his degree. There are lots and lots of pictures of him like on campus and stuff, but he also did a lot of other stuff to understand the human equation. So for example, this is a photo of Einstein with the famous singer Paul Robeson, and there's a Paul Robeson High School here in Chicago. Another example, and this is in the Princeton Review magazine, because of segregation, singer Marian Anderson, wonderful singer, as an African American, was denied lodging at a hotel in Princeton. In response, Albert Einstein invited her to stay at his home, an invitation he'd extended to Paul Robeson a couple of years earlier. So Einstein had a long history of connecting with people and trying to understand the human equation. So my hypothesis is, if anybody would have ever asked Sid Caesar, which no one ever did, hey, what is your answer to Einstein's question? What is the human equation? My hypothesis is Sid Caesar would have said, I don't know the answer to that, but the one I do know the answer to is, what's predictive of success in all the stuff that we're doing? So let's take a look, and all of these are extremely well documented. One of the nice things about this Show of Shows crew is there is an insane amount of documentation. As just one simple example, and there are lots of these, Carl Reiner went on to talk about it a lot because he created a television show about this group. And you may have heard of the television show. It's called The Dick Van Dyke Show. Granted, that is, comedy, but there's a lot of information there. Sid Caesar gave lots of interviews, so did lots of other people. So we have a lot of information. If you would have asked Sid Caesar what accounted for your success, here's what he actually answered. And there are 10 points here. Number one, you have to have a goal that you want the best audience reaction for a live 90-minute show every week. It's all live. There's no editing. There's no second takes. There's no going back. If it happens, it happens. There are stories of, the scene fell over or someone forgot a line. You just keep going. The method, the writers were constantly trying to top one another. I describe it as a team of creators, not a team of rivals ultimately. There were rivalries there, no doubt, but in an absolute rivalry, one wins, one loses. They weren't doing that. They were creating comedy. They were creating the most popular show in the United States, if not in the world at that point. So they were constantly trying to top one another. And if you look back at, for example, how the time series module is set up, it's doing the same thing. We're going to have these different systems. We're going to try to beat one another. They also did an enormous amount of experimentation and learning. They were constantly experimenting and learning against real evidence, not just what they hoped. They also had total transparency. Everything, all steps, all processes were known to the entire team. There were no secrets. There was an enormous amount of accountability that Sid Caesar pushed. They encouraged everyone to do their best. No excuses, but Sid Caesar said this a million times, never settle. That meant that they rejected a lot of ideas and stories and stuff that just didn't work because their goal is to be the best. It was a meritocracy. Literally nothing else mattered, just the best results. The truth was what mattered. Sid Caesar said many times, what you're writing has to be true. You can make it funny, but it's got to be the truth. If it's not the truth, we're not including it. It was really that simple. They did have conflict. They did not shy away from it at all, actually. There's a lot of examples of it, but they used it to get the best material. They tested ideas. You heard Carol Burnett talk about it, and they were always open and always testing ideas, and the potential for new material came from absolutely everything. You name it, it was potential. And finally, the team, which is what most people look at, was highly talented, highly diverse, huge range of experiences, and they valued respect over liking each other. Take a look at that. And again, we have plenty of documentation that Sid Caesar and the people on this team said all of these things, wrote about them, gave them in interviews, magazine articles, ... While Sid Caesar may not have had, a formal, scientific, experimentally based answer to what is the human equation, he did give all this information out over and over and over again. Because he lived 60 years, almost 60 years after Einstein passed. So he lived a really long time, had lots of chances. But the irony is, no one ever asked him. So I said, you know what? I'll see what I can do to find out. And using this kind of a basis for how you treat people, how you come up with solutions, how you come up with competitive models, trying to do this, you know what? Let's put that in. So I did. And this is part of what influenced the Ensembles package. So to wrap it up, forecasting function in the Ensembles package allows you to generate 28 forecasts, which includes ensembles of time series from correctly formatted time series data. That's your problem. And it automatically produces all the predictions, all the plots, all the reports that are needed, only requires one line of code from you. Uses R and Python, individual ensemble models, regular learning, deep learning. If you want to get it for the moment, it's on my GitHub repository. I'm going to submit it to CRAN at some point. So that's my GitHub repository for the Ensembles package. If you want to install it from my GitHub repository, you actually need to do 3 lines of code. I know, isn't that asking so much? So those are the 3 lines. So thank you for staying with me through the video. I'm very interested in your comments and feedback. Curious about what you have to say. Check out the package and let's see what we can do together to really, really, really make the world a better place. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you again soon. Bye now.